This episode is brought to you by the CNY Women's Network, a media and PR company connecting and celebrating women professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders across Central New York. From networking experiences and wellness pop-ups to our annual CNY Women's Summit, which is the largest event for women leaders in this region, we're building a community where women feel seen, supported, and inspired to grow. We're currently partnering with sponsors for our 2026 event season, including the CNY Women's Summit, our walking club, co-working meetups, fitness pop-ups, editorial campaigns, you name it. If your brand is passionate about empowering women and making meaningful community connections, we'd love to collaborate. You can start the conversation and learn more by heading to cnywomensnetwork.com/opportunities. That's cnywomensnetwork.com/opportunities. Now let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Cultivate CNY. I'm your host, Alex Canavan, and today we're joined by the remarkable Ryan Benz. Ryan is the founder and CEO of Redev CNY, a Syracuse-based real estate development firm on a mission to expand affordable homeownership and advance equitable community revitalization across Central New York. He's a Syracuse University Whitman School of Management graduate, and he has transformed the landscape of attainable housing, creating real pathways to ownership for moderate-income households and ensuring that long-term residents share in their neighborhood's economic growth. His leadership extends beyond development. Ryan serves as chair of the Syracuse Housing Authority and vice chair of the United Way of Central New York, and he sits on the boards of the Southside Community Growth Foundation and the Center for Community Alternatives. His team at Redev CNY was the first in New York State to utilize HCR's Affordable Homeownership Opportunity Program, innovation that earned him the 2026 Crystal Ball Award from the Central New York Sales and Marketing Executives. And when he's not reshaping housing, you might find him at Oh My Darling, the downtown Syracuse restaurant he owns with his wife, Leigh Ann. Today, we'll explore how Ryan is redefining affordable home ownership, the partnerships that make equitable development possible, and what it takes to build a Central New York where everyone has stake in the success. So without further ado, let's get into it. Ryan Benz, welcome to Cultivate CNY.
Thank you so much for having me. Longtime fan. Excited
I'm
to
a
be here.
longtime fan, to be honest. You've
Thanks.
done some really incredible things here for the Central New York community.
Thanks.
Seems like you're not only just extremely entrepreneurial, but also very creative.
Well, it's very nice of you. I think the two go hand in hand together a little bit. You know, my background, I was a musician. My undergraduate degree was in trumpet performance, and I wanted to be an orchestral trumpet player or play on Broadway or something to that effect. I played piano, but I think that artistic, creative side is kind of the basis of a lot of entrepreneurial, opportunities. My wife, I drive her nuts, but whenever we go out to dinner someplace or we try a new experience, I'm always looking at, well, how did they do this? And can I steal the best of it and reimagine it or bring it to life here in Central New York? And certainly our restaurant, Oh My Darling, and the Fitz are examples of that. There's a lot of unique, little things that we steal here and there and borrow and try to implement.
I hear that. I love that. I relate to that. I grew up in the performing arts myself, so I definitely consider myself more of a creative and an artist than an entrepreneur. But I definitely think, having that creative side goes hand in hand with entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I think and truly, not to chat this whole time about the arts, but I feel like that's where you really have an opportunity to find beauty in the world. And I'll find myself, late at night. It's not that I intend to doom scroll, but I'll look for like Broadway videos or things that I'm like, oh man, I want to feel something. I want to really experience like the beauty of life. And so I'm so blessed that I had that upbringing, that the inclusion within the arts. And I'll also say that as a former musician or a recovering musician or whatever you want to say, I remember the countless thousands of hours that I spent studying my craft. And so I just love the work ethic that goes along with that. I'll hire anybody that has that background in the arts or performing arts or dance. My wife is a modern dancer because I understand the work ethic that goes into it, with no guarantee of success, but and I think that's part of the entrepreneurial spirit too, is like, you're going to do something, you're throwing yourself against the wall to see what sticks, and hopefully something resonates or something comes out of it.
Yeah, no, I hear that. The attention to detail that you have to have and just the absolute rigor to excel in the arts, because it is so competitive and such an individualized type of sport, I guess, if you could say.
Sure, yeah.
I always wish that I played on a team sport. I was a dancer growing up as
Nice.
well. So
Awesome.
I always kind of wish I played team sports because I feel like I would have learned a lot more about how to be a good leader, and how to kind of work with other people, because I kind of definitely have that lone wolf mentality sometimes. And I think as an entrepreneur, that can serve you well at
Mm-hmm.
times.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you do want to build something bigger than yourself, you're going to have to learn how to get good at, rallying the troops and keeping people, making everything work as an ecosystem with your whole
Yeah.
team.
The lone wolf mentality as an entrepreneur, I think is really beneficial as you're describing, but it's also dangerous in the sense of like, at what point do you bring other people, surround yourself with those other people, give them the space to be successful? The idea of leadership is to give the people around you the tools to be successful and then get out of their way. And it's tough as an entrepreneur. Like this is what I do. I'm the entrepreneur. So trying to bifurcate roles and responsibilities, I think that's something that I'm struggling with myself right now.
Yeah, I was actually talking about this with someone over this past weekend, and they called me out and they're like, "So you have an issue with trust then?" And I actually never perceived myself to have trust issues. Um, I just think that as the creator and as the founder of something, we know exactly what we want something to look like. And it's just sometimes easier to do it yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also a financial risk conversation because if you're hiring somebody new, not only do you need to really teach them, make sure they're matching your cultural values for what the business stands for and the mission, your why, but then making sure that you're in a fiscal position ready to scale. And these are really tough. There's a lot of risk associated with that. And so the question is well, why does one want to scale? At least in terms of what I do, as kind of a regional development company, the idea of scale, the idea of additional people, why do that? And these are things I'm struggling with. Is this because of ego that you want to scale and get across to New York? Is this because the why that we believe in, the idea of affordable housing, specifically affordable home ownership, that is a universal value. So I can do this and I can do this at a larger scale across the state, but why? Is it for more impact? Is it because I'm bored? So I think that these are all things that entrepreneurs, I think, scaling for the idea of profitability, that's one reason. That's not my why though. So I think you need to
Mhm.
blend your why with your overall goals.
In your mission overall. And I feel that we're at this same point with the CNY Women's Network. And when I first started the network, I had no intention of expanding beyond Central New York. My only mission was to create opportunities and change the narrative in my hometown. And it wasn't until I, just heard from similar community builders and women leaders in other markets across, the center state region that there was a real need for something like this in those areas. So I think that my decision to scale really came from wanting to serve
Hmm.
people and wanting to please people and give people what they want,
Yeah,
which that's just who I am. But also it's very scary because I know that I certainly have my work cut out for me and it's
I
going to
love
be
that.
very hard.
Yeah, well, you're also creating community, though, and you're finding a way. I was part of this group Profound with Jeff Knaus. I
Hmm.
think you a previous guest of yours here. And what he did was found a way to connect really folks across the 90 corridor with each other. And we expanded that level of community and relationships. And I think that's what you're doing too. You just have a bigger opportunity to do this, which I think is just so important. In Syracuse, I've really been an optimist about this. This is partly why my wife and I decided to move back here from New York City. One of my favorite people in the world is Nancy Eaton. She just retired from the United Way, but she's a dear friend. And she's always called Syracuse a Goldilocks city, and that it's big enough that you can
Yep.
start, what you've done here and what we've done, and you have an opportunity to know everybody, to make an impact. But it's also, so it's small enough that you can do those things, but big enough that you feel like you're in a big city that you can go out and explore and enjoy. And it's, then it's geographically unique in its location and those things too. And so it's I love what you do because you're really highlighting all the wonderful things that are happening across the community. All of the positive change makers that are across our community. And now the question is how do you bring that to the state or to the, at the national level as well? So
Yeah.
good
There's
problems to have.
there's so many areas and so many other markets across upstate New York that are very similar to Syracuse and that face the same issues that we face, which the issue that I think had to be addressed when I started CNY Women's Network was the fact that sometimes business doesn't thrive here and sometimes people don't thrive here. And I think the reason for that is just a lack of access to people and opportunities and experiences. Living in New York City, you can walk out your door and you never know who you're going to meet. And there's opportunities falling out of the sky, it seems like, right? That's why people move to New York and live in a shoebox apartment.
Mm.
It's the dream, right? But I started a business at 19 here, did very well with that business, and I never had a reason to leave. And I remember running into someone I went to high school with downtown one time, and they made a comment to me that really, I think, stuck with me. And it was, Alex, why are you still here? I figured you would be in New York or LA or somewhere else by now. I mean, out of all people, why are you still here?
Hmm.
Because I was always just artistic and creative and artistic and creative and ambitious people for the longest time would leave right after high school. But now, especially with all the amazing things that are happening here, we're seeing people come back in droves, people that did leave and they did the big city thing and they're coming back because there are opportunities here that they can see right in front of their faces.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's really cool that I feel like I've been able to play a small role in the changing of the narrative of this region.
Absolutely.
And certainly super passionate about the economic development that's happening here too. So
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'll say similarly. I graduated high school in 2001. They called it the brain drain at the time. Everybody leaves the market. And then all of a sudden you see people, 30s, you kind of get to the next season of your life and all of a sudden people are coming back. And so when we came back here, this is, when you talk about what my why is, something that's always been in the back of my mind is how do I make an impact in this city so that my kids don't have that same feeling that they need to leave to go explore a bigger city? And so what is it that entices folks to those other cities? Now, you mentioned the economic opportunities, but a big part of it are the things that I can at least control within my little world. I think culture, I think about music, I think about how do you feel when you walk into spaces, and we need more of it. No doubt we're not there yet. I think changing the narrative, like what you do, and a lot of our public officials have done a great job of really not only bringing economic development opportunities here, but just highlighting the positive growth within our region, and I think we're all bullish, not just because of Micron. I think Micron is almost a side effect of the positivity within the community, if you will.
mhm.
So, like I said, there's a lot more work to do. We kind of fit in like a small little component of it, but I feel like there's so many of us that make our small impact that it's really resonated. And now at the national scale, we're getting the recognitions that I think we deserve. And despite all those challenges, and it is increasingly challenging to live here like anywhere, but we're still relatively affordable. We still have a top 5, top 3 quality of life. It's still one of the most, in terms of quality of education, it's still top 10 for children. So there's a lot of, positivity that complements the overall narrative shift that I think is really promoting this region.
I remember when Oh My Darling
Yeah.
opened and thinking, there's nothing like this in Syracuse. And then the Fitz.
Hmm.
And where did you get the inspiration for those spaces and why?
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'll say that Oh My Darling, from an aesthetic perspective, was modeled after the Smith restaurant in New York. Don't tell anybody, but absolutely loosely inspired. And then the Fitz was modeled after the Roxy Hotel in Tribeca. Roxy, when we lived in the city, we lived in Hell's Kitchen and in Brooklyn. But like those two vibes are absolutely my wife and I. We want to go to a nice, bright brunch place.
Mm-hmm.
And then we want to go to like a fun speakeasy. Now, I'll also say that aesthetically, Oh My Darling, I try to make it the opposite of what else was around Central New York. So when you think about every other restaurant, literally in Syracuse, it's probably a dark place. I'm not going to say Irish specifically, but like there's a lot of taverns, and even our more popular regional chain restaurants are still dark, and it drives me bananas. And so when you think about the optimism or where Syracuse is as an ethos right now, as like a cult, what is our psyche? We're trying to be more bright and optimistic and airy, and I don't need another dark tavern if I'm trying to be an inspirational kind of a city. So I wanted it, my wife and I wanted it to be bright and open and airy. And that certainly was like the Smith is aesthetic.
Yeah.
And intentionally, we didn't put a drop ceiling in. I think one of our biggest criticisms is that it's a little noisy. I'm like, yeah, it is. But I wanted it to be bigger than all of us when we're sitting in that space. And then the Fitz. So then you think about the human experience. You go on a date night, you're going to go to dinner and a movie or dinner and drinks or putz around in some way. And we own the building. So I had this basement space. I said, what are we going to do with it? And I wanted to complement that experience. So I can't have, open and airy downstairs, but I can have a uniquely new experience. And that's where the Fits came from. So we do free, I think we're one of the last people across Central New York that does free music on Thursday, Fridays, Saturdays. Never a cover. Come downstairs, and it's a different experience where you go to Oh My Darling, and then you pop downstairs. It's all within one building. And from a business model perspective, it's really important, at least to restaurants, to have multiple sources of revenue to decrease the risk on the primary restaurant. I don't think we'd still be open if it wasn't for the Fits and the way that the overall economics balance each other. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, I wanted to have multiple sources under one liquor license, under one lease, under one operating expense, mentality, but two different experiences. So
Yeah.
that was the vision and how we brought it to Syracuse.
Yeah, I love the Fits. I adore it, especially when you guys have jazz. It's just the perfect atmosphere for a nice little jazz club.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah. We're
Very
very proud of it.
swanky. Today's episode is proudly supported by Empower Federal Credit Union, a member-owned, not-for-profit financial institution that's been putting people and community first for decades. At Empower FCU, banking is personal. They're committed to making financial services more accessible and affordable while reinvesting directly into the Central New York community through volunteer efforts, donations, and partnerships with local organizations that offer food security, accessible healthcare, safe housing, and youth development. Empower FCU is committed to creating a more secure future by supporting jobs, infrastructure, and access to homeownership. Through everyday banking, flexible lending, and trusted financial guidance, we help members reach their goals with confidence. To learn more about how Empower Federal Credit Union is making an impact, visit empowerfcu.com. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Canon Advisory Group, a trusted partner for entrepreneurs and small business owners across the country. At Canon Advisory Group, their mission is simple: to make managing your finances easier so you can focus on what really matters, growing your business. From bookkeeping and payroll to strategic consulting, their experienced team works across industries like healthcare, technology, finance, and manufacturing to provide personalized, detail-oriented support. Whether you're a startup or an established company, Canon Advisory Group helps you streamline operations, stay compliant, and move forward with confidence. To learn more, you can visit canonadvisorygroup.com. Where did you get your business savvy from? It sounds like you were super intentional and strategic there.
Well, my wife and I both are artists, I'll say that. And when we lived in New York City, I was working in real estate. I've been in real estate for like 15 years at this point. Um, but at the time, my wife and I had the inside scoop on super cheap retail space at the South Street Seaport. And this is right after Hurricane Sandy had came through New York City. So all of the lower Manhattan was really decimated. And a friend of mine opened up a little wine bar in the South Street Seaport. It's Pier 17 was like the famous pier that was there forever. And his rent was $500 a month with a little percentage of sales back. And the Seaport has just been a tremendously tourist-driven market forever. And so I'm like, holy cow, man, for $500, I don't know what I'm going to sell, but I can sell something and make $500 a month. And so my wife and I signed a lease on this little space in the mall before I knew what I was going to sell. And within 3 days of us signing the lease, my wife and I decided to open up a women's boutique store. And I'm not going to give away all of our initial secrets because they're not things to be proud of in terms of how did we source our original garments and how did we do that. But I'll say we hustled our butts off. And we turned that one little store. We then expanded to a second location, then a third location, all at the Seaport. And then we actually expanded to 2 other locations across Manhattan and Nyack, New York as well. So Lily's Forest was the name of it. And my wife, she worked 3 jobs, including at this little boutique store. I worked in real estate. And the secret to entrepreneurship, if we're going to bring this all kind of circle this back, is work your butt off. And so we were both working multiple jobs. We never took a penny from that business. We kept all the money in that. And so that when we finally decided to move back to Syracuse, it was that money that allowed us to buy the buildings, which is where Oh My Darling is. And we brought that into a new investment, which is what Oh My Darling and the Fitz was. But
Wow.
we paid for all of that. Neither one of us came from anything, not to discredit our family, but not from wealth or anything like that. We just worked our butt off,
Hmm.
all the time. We had multiple jobs. We saved every penny we did, could get our hands on. And then we leveraged it, and we over leveraged it, and we got a little lucky. And we're so thankful to the city that they adopted us at the restaurant. But that's where it all started, was at this little boutique store. And then you make one bet to the next bet to the
Yeah.
next bet.
Yeah. Making bets, right? So, I mean, on one hand, of course, it's always going, the key to entrepreneurship is working your butt off, like you said, but also, I mean, taking risk. You signed that lease before you even knew how you were going to pay the rent.
Yeah, but I think calculated risk, though, is really important here.
Hmm.
Goodness. So calculated risk in terms of my rent's $500. And by the way, I'm like 28 years old. And here's the other, not the full other side of that story. We I had so much debt at the time. I had like $1,900 left on my credit card. And we spent $1,500 of that to go buy inventory. And then we spent $400 on that to paint. And we literally took my car and drove around Brooklyn, and I found broken pallets and furniture on the sidewalk. And I brought it back to the seaport. I bought some rope, and it was beautiful. I hung these coffee tables that I found on the streets in Brooklyn. I hung them from the ceiling upside down. I drilled holes into the side of the coffee table, and we hung our hangers in there. Now, what that did visually is that when people walked by the store, they walked in and there's literally floating tables in there, and people would just come in and buy stuff. And they it was the visual of what they were, kind of catching their eye. But then we closed this up from that point. As that business matured, we also then began to refine it, where 100% of our garments were then made in the United States. Everything was privately labeled Lee Lee's Forest, and it was priced affordably at less than $100 a piece. So, in a tourist-driven market where your customers from Illinois, like, it was a perfect combination. Anyways, I digress, because uh, entrepreneurs are focusing on risk mitigation. So there, I had very little risk because I'm 20 something years old, and I had no money to lose, really. With Oh My Darling, we did the same thing. We mitigated our risk by owning the real estate and having three sources of revenue within that economic model. That's Oh My Darling, the Fits, and then we do catering. And catering is
Hmm.
a huge portion of our business. And then that brings me to our real estate development. And so I've learned how to utilize things like tax credits, where I can bridge tax credits to decrease my risk, decrease the equity that we need to put into these deals. That, from an entrepreneurial perspective, like, this is how I'm able to scale or do multiple projects at one way. Is how do you leverage but also control your risk?
That's super interesting. How did you learn about the tax credits and how to leverage different things like that? Did you read? Did you listen to podcasts? Do you have a mentor?
Well, that goes back to the secret sauce of Syracuse, is that people will answer the phone here. That's what I'm
Yes,
saying, is like,
exactly.
this is the Goldilocks. If you have a problem, figure out who has a solution and call them, and they're
Yeah.
going to answer. And so when we did our first project, where Oh My Darling is, we bought two buildings. I called a buddy of mine, Steve Case. He owns Acropolis Realty Group and the Acropolis Brands. He's also a friend of mine from business school. So we had met up at Syracuse. We were both doing our masters up at Whitman at the time. And we kept in touch by playing fantasy football together for like 6 or 7 years afterwards. And we were just part of that group and having a good time. But it goes back to the value of relationships, certainly in Central New York, but the importance of relationships in general. And then after we finished that, our next building was the Penfield building, which is the building with the house on it, across from Destiny USA. It's like that old.
Yes.
Right. So I'm very proud. I was really the first one that started working on that project. I put the development team together. I called my friends at Housing Visions. And again, I didn't know how to solve this problem, but I knew how to figure out how to do that. So I called smarter people than I. I put the deal together that ended up being a $60 million deal. Huber Brewer was our general contractor. We partnered with Catholic Charities, Housing Visions, us at Redev CNY and Acropolis, and we got that vision across. So the point is that if you don't know the answer, how do you surround yourself with people via partnership, joint ventures, um, to figure that out? And I want to share one other quick story. as I do try to determine how to scale Redev CNY, what I've been very comfortable in doing is bringing in partners that I can give equity to. I'm somebody that I'm very okay giving equity to colleagues that work with me in some way. And sometimes that's actual equity. Sometimes it's a share of net profits, but it's calculated in a very open and transparent way. And so when we started my construction company, Redev Construction, I'll openly share, I have the best business partner, Jen Mullane, that runs that company because she matches my ethos. She matches your in the sense of we're doing this for the greater good of Central New York and that we add value through this. We're a WBE certified general contracting business, right? But Jen runs that business, So I think as you're looking to scale and from an entrepreneur, don't be afraid to give up equity to surround yourself with great people. I think that secret sauce of and it goes back to what we were chatting about before. Don't be a lone wolf. Surround yourself with people that share that vision and find a way that makes sense economically, but then you have people that can hold each other accountable and you're building something together. I think there's a lot of value there.
Yeah. And that's truly the secret to scaling is getting the right people on board. And if you want to grow it, it's going to require more people to help grow it, help run it. And I think that's the hardest part of scaling is seeing, the easy part is having the vision, maybe developing the strategy and understanding how to get from point A to point B. But it's the in-between of okay, who do we need to bring on board to execute this new initiative?
It's scary, especially when you have this vision, and even if somebody shares the vision or ethos, you don't know how it's going to work out, It's part of the risk, that's part of the controlled experiment of entrepreneurship is leap. I had a friend of mine from business school, one of the brightest humans I've ever met. This person got their MBA and their CPA, and they always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And they are now, but I'm going to kind of call it the failure to launch a little bit because it took 15 years after, setting themselves up for this success before they launched their business. And so I'm somebody where I'm more open to risk. I'm gonna jump now and ask questions later, kind of a thing.
Too.
Yeah.
Sometimes it bites me in the butt though.
Yeah, well, but I think that's the story of being an entrepreneur. Take the risk, jump, go,
learn the hard lessons.
Yes.
It's okay.
And candidly live that lesson, not only in business or in entrepreneurship, but in your life. Just go, talk to the person, send the email, make the phone call, send a handwritten note. That goes a long way these days too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Nobody does that anymore. Do you do that often?
No, I'm. This is a moment where I'm giving advice, not taking my advice for sure.
Yes, you're very wise, right? But it's hard.
Matt
it's hard
Reed.
to do it all.
He's the guy that's the
yeah
handwritten note mayor of Syracuse.
He's incredible.
One of my favorite, him and his wife stuff. Yeah.
Yes, actually, I just got a text from Stephanie the other day. Said, "Let's get coffee soon. I have some ideas," and I'm like, that's the best text I could have ever received.
100%. I'm free right now.
I cannot wait to get coffee and hear her ideas.
That's awesome.
So tell me what you guys are focusing on right now with Redev CNY.
Oh, goodness. All right. So we have a lot in the pipeline. I'm very proud that Redev CNY was the first development firm in New York State to utilize a program through New York called the Affordable Housing Opportunity Program. And New York realizes that there's a couple of things here. If you want to make long-term change, utilizing the low-income housing tax credit, which if you think about affordable housing, most projects are financed utilizing the low-income housing tax credit. But in general, what that does is subsidize affordable rental properties. And so New York State in 2023 launched this new program, which we were the first ones to use this program, that creates affordable home ownership opportunities. And so we've completed 2 projects to date. Our first one was in East Syracuse, which was the St. Matthews condominiums, which was 21 condos. And then we just finished our project on West Fayette Street at 1117 West Fayette. That's 38 affordable condos. Now, not to get into the weeds, but what makes these so unique is that these will be condominiums for sale to households that make less than the median income of our area. And so by definition, they're affordable because they're technically at 80% of AMI levels. Now, New York, I think, smartened up, recognizing instead of spending all of this subsidy on a rental project. We're trying to get folks to break that cycle of generational poverty and generational renting, which, you really don't create equity and you kind of stay in this. And then there's, so many studies that show if your parents rented, then you're twice as likely to rent. So you're never building equity.
Yeah.
And so New York launched this program that is helping affordable households get into homeownership. So like I said, we finished 2 projects to date. I think it's about 30 million we finished so far. Our next project is going to be closing in a couple of months in Rochester. That's 33 units. We have a 40-unit project behind that in Auburn. And then we're going to be building, I think, the first new building in Syracuse in a long time, which is about 70 units, all focusing on affordable home ownership opportunities. And what does that mean in terms of actual income levels? Because sometimes that's ambiguous. Our market, if you're a single household individual, so I'm thinking like if your listeners are living on Tip Hill, young professionals, or maybe they're later in their life, but just from an income level perspective, if they're making less than $72,500 a year, they would be eligible to purchase one of our condominiums. The way we priced it is that it's intended that no household will spend more than 30% of their income on their household expense. And that's one of the challenges these days. If you're trying to live in a market, in an apartment, oftentimes you're spending more than 30% of your income on your rent, never mind your utilities and everything else that goes into it. And so New York defines affordable living at 30% or less. So what we did is we took that 72.5 times 0.3, and you can kind of back into how much is somebody spending on their living expense. So it's $72,500 for one person, and then it's like $11,000 per person after. So $83,000 for 2 people, $93,000 for 3 people, and $104,000 for 4 people. Long way to say we're focusing on creating home ownership affordable levels moving forward, and that's kind of, I think, going to be our new bread and butter, if you will, or our focus here in the long term. The benefits to the households, they build equity, they break that cycle of cyclical renting. Their households are spending no more than 30% going towards their mortgage expenses. For households that have children, there are innumerable, measurable, tangible results that focus on the quality of that child living in a household where their parents live actually own the home. The child will statistically perform better in school. They are twice as likely to own a home themselves in the future. They have better social and emotional development, as children, recognizing they're now living in a stable household. So all of these reasons that match our why, my why as a company to create that kind of a culture.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I come from a family that's always rented. So, and actually, it's interesting what that does to the next generation, right? I would love to be a homeowner. However, it's something that's always seemed quite out of reach for me and not really hasn't been super high on my priority list. And this past weekend, someone asked me what my dream home looks like. And I didn't have an answer because I've never thought about it. And I've never thought that was even, something that was attainable. And a lot of little girls grow up dreaming about their dream home, right? So it was kind of eye-opening to realize, I've never thought about it because we've rented my whole life. And you're right. I mean, there is this weird sense of like nothing's permanent, everything's temporary, especially when you're renting. Living in a house, the homeowner always wants to sell the house eventually. So then
Sure.
you have like 60 days to get out if they're nice,
Yeah.
which happened a couple times growing up to us. So
Yeah.
is this mission, tied to a personal experience for you, or simply just you wanting to make Central New York a more stable
No,
and
goodness, I came from a wonderful family. I'm one of 6 kids in a stable household. My parents never separated. They're still together. They retired to Florida. I think about I go back to we're the Goldilocks city. Our within the city of Syracuse, poverty rate for children is approximately 46 to 47%, right? So just shy of 1 out of 2 children. In the county, from a broader reach, you're around 17 to 18% of children live in poverty. All right,
Yep.
so that sucks.
That's-
So how do you fix it? Our elected officials are doing their job. They're finding economic opportunities to bring to the market that should increase the average wages. That's one way to do so. And then we need to make sure things like job training, all of these opportunities are inclusive for our full community. a lot of ways, that's a public-private partnership. Ways that I can make an impact in that, I think, is through this. One of the challenges, and this is partly why we started a construction company, is so I have greater control over the construction costs. It's so expensive to build that part of the reason the rents are so high is because that's directly correlated to the cost of construction. Now, you ask me, why do I do what I do, though? Alex, I just think it's the right thing to do. I think that we need more safe, affordable housing. I think that's partly what brought me to the board of the Syracuse Housing Authority, where I'm now the chair, but I've been on that board for about a year, because we need more safe, affordable housing as quickly as we can absolutely build that. I love what that organization is doing over on the East Adams neighborhood, and filling
Yeah.
with our partnership with MBS. And I would, again, I made this comment earlier. I'll answer the phone to any potential developer to teach them my skills, because we need to develop as quickly as we can. If you want to change that 47% of children aren't living in poverty, let's build more housing. Let's build affordable, safe housing. Let's make sure that they can read, and I'm on the board of the United Way. I love, again, I'll go back to Nan. We started Book Buddies, and I love, we have 600 volunteers that go into the city of Syracuse school and read to elementary children and make sure that they're able to read at second grade levels, and there's a lot of metrics, again, that if you can't read by that point, statistically over time, you're going to underperform as an adult. So all of these things are correlated. And that's my why. It's like, all right, so I can handle housing in some way. I think we need more housing, but that's also why I support the organizations I support, and where I spend my time.
Yeah. Well, Central New York is certainly lucky to have you, Ryan. Seriously. And I don't mean to embarrass you by saying that, because you seem very humble, but it's people need to be willing to do the work and do the good work in order for regions to change. And I'm just so glad that you're doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. There's so many great-hearted people that are working
Yeah.
towards solving our problems. We need a little bit more time. We have to catch up on the poverty issues. But like I said, there's just the energy's there, the economic opportunities are there.
Yeah.
And so I'm really optimistic that, like, 20 years from now, it's going to look so totally different. And that's the work we're putting the work in today. Like you, candidly, like all of us, that are focusing on the new iteration of what Central New York. And part of that is optimism. Part of that is uh, relationships, bringing folks together. But I'm optimistic that we're going to get to that higher quality, and that it's going to be inclusive for everybody in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift a little bit. I want to just talk about Central New York. I mean, we were just talking about how much we love Stephanie and Matt, but aside from all of the work that you're doing, and I have a feeling you work a lot, what do you like to do around the community that's just for you? Maybe somewhere you and your wife like to go? Any favorite restaurants, coffee shops?
It's funny, whenever people ask me for lunches, I never go to Oh My Darling. So I'll say any other restaurant is okay. I went to Attilio's last week with another friend. Loved that. They're great folks. I picked up skiing a couple years ago, and that's like my new favorite thing. I'm trying to get my son Oliver, shout out to him, he's 7. I brought him over to Greek Peak a couple weeks ago, and he did some greens for the first time by himself. So he's getting there. We're having a
Nice.
great time. Yeah. I try to find opportunities to breathe. My wife is so supportive of that, trying to find just moments for, because I think, like any entrepreneur, your brain is literally always working, and, 7 days a week. So finding those moments, taking a breath. Favorite restaurants, Cider Mill. Love those guys. Great humans. Even better pork. Well, not better pork chop. Great pork chop.
Yeah, they just opened up the Clerk's House.
Yeah.
The cafe in the back.
Yeah.
I still have to go and check it out. I think I might do that this weekend.
Same. It's on the to-do list, but great humans. And then I just try to spend time with my family as much as possible. Try to travel when I can to see my brothers and sisters and my nieces and nephews. I've got 16 nieces and nephews. So we, try to get around and spread the love everywhere we can.
That's amazing. Any sort of like outdoor activities you like to do aside from skiing? Obviously, you like to go to Greek Peak, but we host a walking club and a hiking club. So I'm just kind of keeping my eyes out for more trails to add this year.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Somebody said to me, they said, this is a couple years ago, Arel Moody, if you know Arel,
Yep.
he goes, you need to have a winter hobby in order to get through the winters in Central New
Yep.
York. And so I picked that up. I took that to life. And that's why I picked up skiing at 40 years old or whatever it was. So that's my get out of jail free card. Is I'm doing that just about every weekend these days.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get out this weekend myself. I just got a new Helly Hansen jacket I have to break in.
You gotta check it out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where do you go?
I usually go to Lab, but a couple weeks ago I went out to Bristol Mountain in Canandaigua, which
Awesome.
was fabulous. Love it out there. That's where I grew up skiing. That's where I learned how to ski. So it was nostalgic. But I think this weekend I'm gonna try to check out Greek Peak.
No, it's great out there. And I was talking to my wife about this because we have February break coming up in a couple of weeks, and we're trying to say, well, what do we do? And I offered Vermont, thinking, oh well, we can go. You can sit some of the resorts have like the indoor water parks, or you can go and hang out there, and I'll just hit the ski track, hit the slopes for the entire day.
Yeah.
She didn't bite, so we need to find someplace a little bit warmer.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. I don't blame her. It's been a long winter, and the groundhog just saw his shadow, so we're doomed.
For sure.
Well, Ryan, is there anything you'd like to leave people with before the end of this episode? Where can people connect with you and follow Redev CNY?
Yeah, if you ever want to reach out, check us out. Contact info is on redevcny.com, or follow me on LinkedIn. I think that my takeaway here is if you are a budding entrepreneur or just an avid listener and you have this idea, take the leap, make the phone call, jump, don't be afraid, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s where you don't have a lot to lose financially, just go ahead and start the process.
I agree. You can always pivot and go and get a job later, right? Especially if you are in your 20s or 30s. I always say I did things a bit backwards, and I'm getting my entrepreneurial bug out now. And maybe someday I'll be able to get a nice, well-paying salary job.
I think you're ruined. Once you become an entrepreneur, I was just talking to a friend of mine about this. Like, you don't go back.
Yeah.
It's hard to go get the 9 to 5 after this. So.
It would probably be
you
tough
are
for
ruined
me.
for good, unfortunately. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate
Alex.
your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Cultivate CNY. If you enjoyed this conversation, I'd love it if you left us a quick review and made sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. And if something in today's discussion resonated with you, please share it. Whether it's on social media or directly with a friend, you never know how hearing this conversation might be exactly what someone needs right now. And I love to hear your feedback. I love to hear your thoughts. So please be sure to tag us on social media if you do share there. This podcast is produced by Diam Media Group, a video production company based in Syracuse, New York. If you'd like to work with Diam Media for your next big campaign, or maybe a podcast you'd like to get off the ground, head to diammedia.com to learn more. Until next time, I'm Alex Canavan, and I'll see you next Monday.